When moviegoers first saw An American Werewolf in London, many didn't know how to process the bizarre film. Since director John Landis was well known for making comedies, most people expected a horror spoof, and it came as a shock that the film was actually an attempt at genuine horror, and more surprising still, that it succeeded in genuinely frightening the audience. Without a doubt, the movie has its humorous and lighthearted moments, yet these scenes are brilliantly intertwined with a macabre tragedy that makes you feel sympathy for the lead character even as he becomes a terrifying monster who slaughters innocents without mercy. The film, with its seemingly out-of-place components, may have been considered odd at first, but it didn't take long for it to be appreciated by the masses as the unique horror masterpiece it really is. This is the untold truth of An American Werewolf in London. In an interview with IndieWire, director John Landis described how he began working on the screenplay for An American Werewolf in London in 1969, when he was still a teenager. While serving as a production assistant during the filming of Kelly's Heroes in Yugoslavia, Landis and a co-worker were traveling down a road when they witnessed a gypsy funeral. The recently deceased man was wrapped in garlic and buried feet first in an abnormally deep grave with the hope that the precautions would prevent his rising from the dead. The experience inspired Landis to start writing a horror story, and it didn't take him long to finish the script. Convinced that an encounter with the undead was one of the most terrifying things he could experience, he was intrigued with the idea of how an 18-year-old like himself would deal with such a horrifying situation. However, the idea did not garner much interest at first, so he was forced to stow it away for more than a decade. Over the course of that decade, Landis made a name for himself with a string of well-received comedies that included the Kentucky Fried Movie, Animal House, and The Blues Brothers. His career established, the director was finally able to make his werewolf film in 1981. Even though the funeral rites that inspired Landis were driven by a fear of zombies, he wanted to go in another direction for his film. As he later recalled, "I knew I didn't want to do a serial killer or a zombie. I wanted something where you really had to suspend disbelief. I settled on werewolves mainly because, other than ghosts, they're the only really international monsters. Every culture has man-beast stories. Even Dracula can turn into a wolf." Historic Mysteries explains that not only have werewolf, Landis was also more interested in the complex nature of the werewolf character for the featured monster. "I really took from the Lon Chaney Wolfman picture, because what that added was this element of tragedy," he added. Historically, people in France and Wales were burned to death for being werewolves or witches, and the film made it a curse, where the wolfman himself is a victim. All this history and complexity means werewolves are never too far from the cultural zeitgeist. Although Landis had to wait years before he could get American Werewolf in London made, it arrived at a real moment for the beasts. The Howling, Wolfen, and Full Moon High were all released the same year. An American Werewolf in London was actually filmed in the UK, but the reasons were more financially than artistically driven. As John Landis explained, "When I was shooting Werewolf, Warren Beatty was shooting Reds here, and there was also another little film in progress called Raiders of the Lost Ark. These were all made under a very useful tax break agreement called the Eadie Levy, which began the boom of Americans coming to make big pictures with largely British casts and crews in London in the 1960s. Turns out mine was one of the last Eadie pictures made." Filmmakers often use studio sets and other means of trickery to make audiences think they're seeing a different part of the world, and the effect can be seamless, but there's still nothing like the real thing, so American Werewolf fans can thank the Eadie Levy for this film's verisimilitude. Still, even with the tax breaks, Landis at one point considered moving the location to Paris and filming in France instead. John Landis wanted poor weather throughout the movie, so he scheduled filming for February and March. This was especially difficult for lead actor David Naughton, who had to run around naked outside in the freezing cold. In an interview with the SF site, the actor recalled, "That's rather difficult to do because it's cold and you've got no shoes on, and I don't jog in bare feet in any weather, even back in California. That's the hardest part, you're running in wooded areas, on slick paths, trying not to look like you're going, ooh, ow, oh, ouch. And they were saying, come on, it's warm, this is a dream, you're leaping, you're like a deer. So I just had to go for it." While the production was set up in the town of Cricketon in Wales, there was such bizarre weather that at one point it snowed, sleeted, rained, and had periods of clear sunshine all in the same day. Landis always wanted the right look, even if it was very uncomfortable for the actors. As Naughton recalled, "We were in England and it's not raining, so they made rain. Why would you make rain in England? We're out there on the moors with these rain machines. It was so cold the rain machines were freezing." Hey, wait a second, that's not fair. If the rain machines are freezing, then we shouldn't have to be in the rain, should we? Renowned makeup and special effects expert Rick Baker put in meticulous detail to create the American Werewolf visuals that are still admired today. Bloody Disgusting recounts the many months of prep work for the transformation scene, when the audience first sees Naughton's painful and frightening metamorphosis into a werewolf. When Baker met David Naughton for the first time, he knew what he was going to put the actor through and said, "I feel sorry for you." To get into his werewolf makeup, Naughton left for work at 4:30 a.m. and sat still in a chair for 10 full hours until he was ready for filming, a process he described as a long flight that never gets there. He complained so incessantly that during a panel, Landis and Baker told him to stop making it sound like he survived torture. Griffin Dunn's experience was also unpleasant, but not as bad as Naughton's. When talking about Baker in the process, Naughton's co-star recalled, "I hated the makeup. I loved Baker, he made the 6 hours bearable. The makeup's on, and then it constricts, and then it pulls on your skin, and then it has to be loosened up. You have people fussing with you, you want to pass out from the fumes. The glue is kind of like airplane glue, so it wasn't comfortable." David Naughton may have been vocal about the torturous process he had to endure, but there's no doubt that he respected Rick Baker's impressive techniques. As he put it, "I had worked with the best, or the person who would soon become one of the top makeup artists." And Naughton is obviously far from the only one to appreciate the artist's talent. Not only did Baker win an Oscar for his revolutionary makeup effects, but he was the first to ever earn an award for an entirely new category that was created in 1981, as noted by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. American Werewolf in London continued a partnership that Landis and Baker struck up on the director's first film, 1973's Schlock, when both men were barely in their 20s. "I want to do this transformation in a way that it hasn't been done," Baker recalled Landis telling him of the pivotal werewolf scene. "I cannot believe if you are going to change into a Wolfman or Mr. Hyde or whatever, you're going to sit in a chair and wait for it, wait for the transformation to take place. Show the pain." Thanks for watching. Please subscribe our channel.